Hello everyone, I'm David Hyde Costello. I'm a picture book author and illustrator, and today I'd like to talk to you about painting with watercolors. The watercolors I use to paint the illustrations in my books come in tubes like this. But you can also find watercolors in sets like this one where the colors are dry in separate pans, so let's take a look. I have a brand new set of watercolors, and I'll also need a cup of water, a paper towel, and some paper. It's nice to have brushes of all different shapes and sizes, but this set comes with its own brush, so let's just start with this one. Watercolor works by wetting the brush and then adding water to the paint, but I like to keep the paper towel handy so I can control just how much water is in the brush. Once I've wet the brush, I mix the water with the paint, and then I can brush it on the paper. With this brush, if I press down very lightly, I can make thin lines, and if I press down harder, the bristles spread out and I can make a thicker line. When you use your brush, you want to keep the bristles moving in the same direction, trailing behind as you move the brush across the paper. So just pull the brush along, or move it side to side. But you don't want to push against the bristles like this, because over time that can bend them. Just pull it along like so. And you can reshape your brush when you're done. Here's a piece of plain copier paper. It works okay to paint on, but you've probably noticed that when paper gets wet, it wrinkles up. So if you can paint on watercolor paper, that's a kind of paper that won't wrinkle when it gets wet. Sometimes though, I'll even paint on a piece of cardboard from some food packaging. It doesn't work as well as watercolor paper, but I still think it's fun. Now when you start with a rectangular piece of watercolor paper, it's nice to draw another rectangle inside to give yourself a margin. Where I'm drawing the rectangle, that will be the edges of my painting, and that way, if I need to go over the line, there's still paper there. And then I can handle it by the edges without touching the surface of my painting. Also, if I decide to frame it, then there's some extra paper around the edges to hold it in the frame. Now something great about watercolor is the way you can get a smooth, even area of color. And the way to do that is to first paint the whole area with water. Clean water, just as if you were painting it, get a smooth, even distribution, and then, when you've wet the entire area, dip your brush in the paint and go over the area again. The water you've already put down will help the paint spread out evenly on its own. Also, I'm holding my watercolor paper at an angle so that gravity helps spread the paint evenly in the direction I want. Another great thing about watercolor is the way you can blend colors together on the page while they're still wet. I'll add some purple to my blue. And once again, I'm holding the watercolor paper at an angle so that gravity helps pull the color in the direction I want. But sometimes you don't want the colors to blend together. Let's say, for example, I want to paint a green bucket in the sand. Watercolor is translucent, and that means we can see through it a little bit. But green is made of blue and yellow, And brown, like I will paint the sand, is blue and yellow and red. So I'll just paint everything blue first, and then I'll let it dry. And that way, when I paint my green and my brown colors over the blue, the colors won't bleed together. But what if I wanted to make a yellow bucket on light pink sand? Well, to do that, when I'm spreading the clear water over the area of the sky, I'll carefully paint around the sand in the bucket. And then when I paint in the blue of the sky, as that color spreads, it won't bleed into the bucket or the sand. But I'll still let that dry, because if the edge of the blue is still wet when it touches the edge of the yellow, those colors will bleed together. Now that the blue of my first painting is dry, I'll paint the green over that, and I'll let the green dry before I add the brown. I like to work on two paintings at once, so I have something to do while I'm waiting for one to dry. Now that this blue is dry, I'll paint my yellow bucket and let that dry. Now I'll go back and paint the sand under the green bucket. And now the light pink. You can also mix colors before you add them to your painting. I want to add a little bit of a shadow to my yellow bucket, so I'll take some yellow paint and add just a touch of purple. And now some orange. And when I have the slightly darker yellow that I want, I'll paint that over the yellow of the bucket. Like I said, it's nice to have different brushes of different shapes and sizes, but you can use other tools besides brushes. I'll use a tissue to dab up some of the blue to make a soft cloud. When your watercolor is dry, you can use other media as well. Maybe I want to add a goldfish in a hot air balloon fishbowl. I'll draw my fish with a pen. And the bowl and the balloon with marker. I let this blue sky dry overnight, so I know it's totally dry, and that's why I'm getting crisp, clean marker lines. I'll color in my fish with marker. And I'll color in the balloon with colored pencil. Markers like these ones are water soluble, and that means if you paint over them, some of that color will bleed into your paint. That might be useful for something. If you want to keep a clear, crisp marker outline, and you're allowed to use an indelible marker, sometimes called a permanent marker, that ink won't bleed into your watercolor. so your marker lines will stay crisp and clear. Crayons are water resistant, so you can paint right over them. I love how versatile watercolor is. There are all kinds of things you can do with it, and all kinds of pictures you can make. When I'm all done painting for the day, I'll rinse out my brushes, still keeping the bristles moving in the right direction, so it will be in good condition next time I'm ready to paint. Those are some techniques I thought you'd find useful as you're getting started with watercolor. The more you use watercolor, the more you'll find your own way of painting, and I hope you'll have an opportunity to try them out. Now, if you live near the Palmer Public Library in Massachusetts, I have something special to tell you about, which is that this month, April of 2023, if you visit the Palmer Public Library, you can go to the youth room and ask about the watercolor take and make, and they'll give you your own set of watercolors like this one to take home and use. They'll also give you a brush like this. This is nice because this is a special brush that has water in the handle, so as you use it, the water comes down into the bristles. It also has a very fine point for small details. They'll give you some watercolor paper and some small pieces of watercolor paper. Now, I'll tell you what those are for. If you've been watching my video series, Making the Scene with Paper Mouse, you know the mouse is going to visit an art gallery, and that means I'm going to have to make a lot of mouse-sized paintings for that gallery scene, and I thought you might like to help me with that. So, if you would like to do a small mouse-sized painting on one of those little pieces of watercolor paper, and you'd like it to be in the mouse film, you can bring it back to the library by the end of this month, by the end of April 2023, and leave it with them, and then I'll use that in the gallery scene. Please print your name on the back of your painting, and when it's done, we'll make sure everyone gets their paintings back. But whether you make mouse-sized paintings or great big paintings, I hope you enjoy your watercolor set. Thanks for watching, everyone.